Hi, and welcome to my channel, Shades of Sage, where I share all things motherhood. My name is Tashima. I'm a doula and new mom of 5, and today I am finally getting around to sharing my last birth story. So that is with baby Alma. She's my 5th child, and it was a vaginal birth after 2 C-sections. So if you're interested in knowing how I did that, everything that happened during my labor, and how I was able to have my 3rd successful VBAC, just keep watching. So let's get right into it. So I went into labor on my own on October 27th, 2023. So my due date was October 22nd, and I gave birth on October 29th. So on the day of October 27th, I had did the mile circuit 2 times that day. So I did it earlier in the afternoon, before I took a nap, but I only held each pose for 10 minutes. Now, normally you're supposed to do 30 minutes for each pose. It is 3 to 4 poses total. And that night before I went to bed, I did the full mile circuit. So I really do believe that that's one of the things that got labor started for me. So I did the mile circuit, I got into bed, and I started having contractions like 15 to 30 minutes after I completed the mile circuit for the 2nd time that day. So I was so excited. I went downstairs to use the bathroom, and then I started to notice that my mucus plug was coming out. So that was really exciting because the same thing happened to me in my 2nd birth, and that was my 1st VBAC birth. So I knew that things were starting to go. I knew that I was already having contractions, and now I was losing my mucus plug, so that was really promising. So I put on a pad at that point in time, and then I went back upstairs to lay down in my bed, and I grabbed a towel, and I went back upstairs, and I put a pad on just in case my water broke, and I also brought a towel with me. So I was putting the towel down in the bed, and I literally had gotten into the bed, like got on my hands and knees, got into the bed, and my water broke. Like I could feel it leaking. It was the craziest thing. So then I rushed back downstairs, used the bathroom, and when I sat on the toilet, like my water broke completely, like everywhere. It just leaked all through the toilet. Now, mind you, I had just used the bathroom, so I knew it wasn't pee, and I wasn't like, trying to pee. It just was leaking and coming out all in the toilet. Now, when I did look down though, it was slightly yellow tinged, slightly greenish. So, I knew to keep an eye on that. And yeah, so that's how things got started. That all happened at 11:15 that night. So at that point, like I said, I was really excited. I called my support people. I started timing contractions, and I let them know, hey, my water broke and I'm having contractions and things are starting to go. So they were all on alert, and I was too excited to come back up in the bed and try to sleep. So at that point, I just stayed downstairs. I got on my exercise ball, continued to time contractions, and just, breathe through them and all that in the early stages of labor. So like I said, I labored all through that night. I was on my exercise ball. I did my figure 8s like I was doing when I was preparing for labor. I did circles, hip circles. I did the pelvic lift and tuck on the exercise ball as well. And I just changed positions as frequently and as often as I could. So when I would get a little bit tired, I would lay down on the couch, but I would have my legs really propped up. I would lay down on the couch on my side, but I would have something stacked really high in between my legs so that it would help with dilation. And it helps with baby positioning also as well. It opens up the top of the pelvis so that baby can get down where they exactly need to be. And then every so often I would turn to the other side. So I never stayed in one position for too long, and I never stayed on one side for too long. So as my support people came to the house, my mom was here with me. She's my doula. She's an RN nurse, and she was the one who was basically, facilitating the birth with me. Like I said, I don't know if I stated this already, but this was a planned home birth. So it was a planned unassisted home birth. We did not have a midwife, and we were not planning on giving birth at the hospital. So once I knew I was in labor, I called my support people. They all came over. I labored throughout the night. Me and my mom took my vitals. So that's my blood pressure, tracking baby's movement with a Doppler, and my temperature every so often. So we did that like every 3-ish to 4-ish hours throughout the night. I read my affirmation cards that my kids wrote for me, and yeah, it was just really nice. We watched TV. I made sure that I stayed hydrated. I had a couple of movies that I knew I wanted to watch during labor, so we put those on. I played music. I listened to the telecast a bit, and I was able to just really focus on the labor, but not like be too like, into the pain and the cessation of the contractions, and just basically did normal you know, just did normal, like, everyday things, you know, to take my mind off of everything. So as the sun came up, you know, obviously my kids were now waking up in the morning, and I cooked. I spent that whole next day cooking, because cooking is one of the things that I love the most. It calms me down. I am a chef also as well. So I made everybody in the house breakfast, and, you know, I would have to stop here and there when I had my contractions. Now, from the moment I got my contractions until the moment I delivered, my contractions were consistent. So at this point, they were at, I think, every 5 minutes or so, and lasting at least a minute long. So they were consistent. Labor never stopped or had like a lull or anything like that. So yeah, I cooked everybody breakfast. I ate breakfast. The kids ate. I remember making some cookies. The kids took their nap. Like, we did our whole normal, like, everyday living things, and like our whole normal regular routine. So that was really fun and exciting. Like I said, cooking is just something that I love. So while I cooked, it was nice for me to just have that peace and calm. Yeah, so I think I made everyone lunch. I made everyone dinner. I was just cooking all day. But it was great to just actually be home, labor how I wanted to, without cords and monitors and beeping and people coming in to check me, and just, you know, like, be in the presence of somewhere where I'm familiar and surrounded by my loved ones. It was just great. So like I said, I labored throughout that whole entire day. The kids were able to be a part of my labor, and I loved that as well. So the day went on, you know, the kids were put to bed. It was nighttime now, and I was starting to get like a little bit discouraged. Obviously at this point I'm tired because I didn't sleep the night before, because I was just getting into bed when my water had broken, and I had stayed up, you know, a whole day without sleeping. You know, I got to rest here and there, but not really sleep. So I was getting tired. And to me, it was lasting a long time, because my last VBAC birth was 6 hours from start to finish. Like, it was really, really fast. But now we're hitting like that 24-hour mark. And, you know, I was getting a little tired, a little discouraged, like, when's my baby coming? Because I just assumed that this was going to be a really fast process, because this was my 5th child and my 3rd VBAC. So I was like, you know, we're going to be in and out, but it really wasn't. Around midnight on the 29th, I remember just checking for the baby's head, or just checking myself. Now, I'm not like, you know, skilled in checking for dilation or anything like that, but I was like, let me just, you know, check and see. I don't know. But when I put my fingers in, I could feel the baby's head. Like, it was the craziest thing. It's not something I ever experienced before. And like, her head was right there. I was like, oh my gosh, her head is right there. I had my mom check as well. She was like, yep, that's the baby's head. So just knowing that her head was so close just really, like, I don't know, like, gave me that extra push and motivation that I needed, that yes, labor was going, it was progressing, she was coming down. Obviously at this point I can feel her descending, and I was so excited. So just that alone helped me to progress through labor, you know, and be encouraged just a little bit more. So when I could feel the baby's head, like I said, I was really excited, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna try pushing and see what that's like. And I gave a couple of pushes, but I wasn't sure if I was completely dilated. Like I said, I'm not a nurse or anything like that, so I wasn't sure if I was dilated, and I didn't want to start pushing, you know, too early or prematurely, and, you know, risk having a swollen cervix, because that happened to me with my first VBAC. So I was like, you know, I'm just gonna wait and labor a little bit longer, and we'll see what happens, you know, after a few hours or so. I remember one turning point for me in labor, like at like 2 in the morning, I think. So after I checked the head and I was excited, you know, I still was tired. So I was like, let me go upstairs to my room and just rest. Like, just rest, like as if I'm normally going to bed. And I keep my room pretty dark. So I came up here, and one thing, it was so nice and cool. Like, I keep my window open as well, because I'm normally hot. So just that cool air. And I remember getting into bed, I put my pillows, you know, propped them up in between my legs, and I laid on my side. So I think I did an hour on each side. And like I said, it was really dark, and I put on this YouTube channel that I listened to, like calming nature music, and it was something that I listened to throughout my pregnancy. And just in that moment, I feel like that's exactly what I needed, because I was getting like a little touched out, a little worn out. Of course, my support people are like, you know, do you think baby's coming soon and all of that stuff. So I just kind of needed to be alone. And I remember my sister came up here with me, and she kind of just watched over me. So she was like, you know, just on the side of me, and we didn't talk or anything like that. And I feel like that was like the turning point in my labor that I really needed to just get me through that next phase of labor. So like I said, I continued to labor throughout that morning, early morning of the 29th. And again, as the sun came up, I was getting a little bit discouraged because like I said, it was taking a while. And at this point, my contractions were definitely really intense, so much more intense. They were getting closer together, and I was definitely getting a little bit vocal at this point. And with the kids being awake and back in the birth space, it just really overwhelmed me. So at this point, like I said, my contractions were really strong. So I tried pushing again just to see, if I could finally bring this whole thing home and wrap it up. But it felt like I forgot how to push. Like I felt like my pushes weren't effective or anything. And that was starting to frustrate me a little bit too. Also at this point, I was starting to get a little bit worried about the baby. So like I said, me and my mom took my vitals and baby's vitals, like with the heart rate monitor and everything like that. I didn't have any problems or issues with my blood pressure, thank God. But I was just getting a little like apprehensive. Like we got good readings on the monitor whenever we took it, but I felt like I wasn't feeling her moving as much. And I knew my water had been broken for a long time. I knew that, it could be some meconium in there because it wasn't clear when it did break. And now we're going on day 2 of broken water. So I started to get a little worried. Like I said, I felt like with the kids there, things were just getting overwhelming. I felt like I couldn't push right. And I just knew that for this next phase of labor that I needed to be somewhere familiar. So it was at that point that I decided to go to the hospital because like I said, I just wasn't sure. I wasn't sure if baby was okay. I wasn't sure how dilated I was. And I just felt like I need to go to the hospital to get confirmation on the baby's health, on my dilation, and just to make sure that everything's okay. And then at that point, I can make whatever decision I need to make from there. So we left the house around 9 a.m. on Sunday morning. That was the 29th. And like I said, because this was a planned home birth, I had nothing packed, like nothing at all. So I remember my sister just threw like some things that I shouted at her to throw in there while she was up here in my room packing up the bag. And I continued to labor in the bathroom. They got the car and everything. I was able to have, someone here to watch the kids. And then us 3 headed to the hospital. So that's my sister, my mom, and myself. At first, I was going to sit in the front, but I could barely get in the car. Like I said, my contractions were strong. I could feel the baby's head, like, all the way down and in my butt. And I could barely sit down. So after I tried getting in the front, I was like, that's not going to work. So I got in the back seat on my knees, and I just stayed back there and labored in the car on the way to the hospital. Now, the hospital I was delivering at was 30 minutes away. So this is a different hospital than I delivered my other children. And even though the ride was a little bit longer, I'm just hoping that I make it there because at this point, I am feeling the urge to push. And I was, just holding in that urge on the whole ride because I was like, I don't want a car baby. Like, no, that would just be the worst thing right now. So I was able to, I feel like, calm down once I knew we were on the way to the hospital. It was the craziest thing. Like, I wasn't freaking out anymore in my mind. I was like, if there's anything wrong, I'm going to a place where I can get the help. So I was able to calm down a little bit and kind of fight my body a little bit to not push the baby out in the car. But yes, we made it to the hospital. It was great. And at this point, my contractions were back to back on top of each other, and they were at least a minute long. So yeah, it was really intense. Once we got to the hospital though, it was like a scene from a movie. It was crazy. We pulled right up to the front of labor and delivery. When the security guard saw me, he immediately ran in and got a wheelchair. I got out the car, got in the wheelchair, and then they rolled me down to triage for the OB department. Now, again, this was not a planned hospital birth, so I didn't do the prerequisite, the pre-registration forms, or none of that, anything. So none of my stuff was in the system. So we're sitting there, or I'm sitting there in the wheelchair at the desk, and the lady's asking me all these questions. And at this point, I can barely talk. I'm trying to breathe through these contractions, and she's asking me all these things that in my head was like, this is stupid. You can see I'm in labor. Take me back there, right? So, I'm just trying to keep myself together. We finally get all the information she needs. My mom and my sister are able to do most of the talking for me, gave her my insurance card, and they send me to the back. So once I get back there, of course, I have to put on a hospital gown. I have to put on the bands so that I can get into the bed and they can monitor the baby. So that's what I did. And that whole process took me a while because every time I had a contraction, I had to literally stop what I was doing and focus and, breathe through those contractions. So that took me a while. I was in the bathroom for a while, but the nurse was so nice. She was so calm and kind and patient with me. I remember looking at my belly in the mirror when I was going to put my gown on, and it looked so funny. Like, it was so low. It was so funny, and I wish I had a picture of it, but in that moment, like I said, I couldn't do anything but just breathe through the contractions. So my phone was there, but I couldn't even snap the picture. But yeah, my stomach had definitely dropped at that point. I knew she was down where she needed to be for delivery. So I got into the bed, we put the bands on, the nurse put the socks on my feet. She was able to get baby on the monitor, and she looked great. So that was a relief in and of itself, because her heart rate was fine, my blood pressure was fine, everything was fine. So then the attendant comes in and asks if she can check me, and of course I consented. And as soon as she checked me, she was like, well, you're complete, you're 10 centimeters. And I was just, oh my gosh, to hear those words, it was just amazing. It was incredible, because my last birth took place in a hospital, but I was not able to progress past 5 centimeters. Like I said, I've had 2 VBACs before, so it's not like I didn't know that I could do it or didn't know that my body could do it, but to know that I had did it, basically all at home was amazing. So it was literally music to my ears. Once she said that, they realized once they went into the system that I didn't have the Group B test done. So they did that test really quickly, and then they literally sent me right up to labor and delivery. So my mom had called me, and I was like, I'm 10 centimeters, we're going up to labor and delivery now. So they allowed them to come in, because they weren't allowed to come in for triage, I guess, just in case they had to send you back home. But they was like, yes, you're delivering this baby. So they wheeled me, upstairs in the elevator. We go all the way up to the labor and delivery floor, and I'm admitted from there and officially a patient. So when I got up there, I remember they transferred me to the labor bed, which was a different bed. And I got on hands and knees, and I had the nicest midwife next to me. She talked really sweetly to me and everything like that. I told her I had to push, and she was like, wait until you feel the urge to push in between contractions, because that means that the baby's down far enough for you and won't go back up. So I was like, okay, that makes sense in my mind. So I waited for that sensation. At that point, I wasn't there yet, and I knew that. So like I said, I was on hands and knees, but she was able to just like manually get the baby on the heart rate monitor. And she kept it, and she held it on my stomach for me, which was amazing. I also asked for the squat bar as soon as I walked into the room, because I knew I wanted to use that. And I was like, where is it? Let's get it. Let's hook it up so that it's, here and ready when I'm ready. So then walks in my doctor. She checks me and confirms that I'm 10 centimeters, which was excellent. And she checked my station as well. I think I was a +2. So yeah, baby was right there. She was ready to go. And then she reminded me again that this hospital does not do or not support VBACs after 2 C-sections. And I told her, I understood that, but I was still giving birth vaginally. And, she briefly went over the risks and all that stuff. And I said, yes, I understand. And she was like, okay, well, if that's what you want to do, just sign these papers and we'll get started. So I signed all the papers that I needed to sign. Now, mind you, I barely could talk at this point, so I barely could sign, but I just did the best I could. Signed the papers for, consent for a VBAC and everything like that. They took my blood. I was hooked up to penicillin just because my water had been broken for so long, and they got my squat bar set up. So again, my doctor had asked if they could place an internal monitor on the baby's head to monitor the baby and to monitor the baby in the contractions, and I declined that. And I could tell she was not happy about that, but I was like, no, I'm not doing that again. I consented to it for my last birth, and I didn't like that experience, so I knew I didn't want that. So I only had the Pitocin hooked up, and they finally found the squat bar. They got that set up. Like I said, the sweetest midwife was next to me. She kept the baby on the monitor so we could see baby's, heart rate and everything like that throughout the pushing stage, because by now, I was ready to push. I could feel the urge to push in between my contractions, and my contractions were on top of each other, like back to back. They were really long, and I was ready to push. So all of that took a matter of minutes. Like it was so fast once I finally got to the labor and delivery room, and once they set up the bar, and that was it for me. Once I saw the bar, I was like, I know how to do this. And I got into position, and the doctor was in front of me, and she was like, okay, let me see you, give a push or whatever. So I gave 2 little pushes before my mind was like, oh, I remember how to do this. This is easy. And yeah, it was great. I gave those 2 little pushes, like those 2 little tentative pushes where I was like, oh, and I remember the sensation that it's not like, and this may be TMI, but it's not like of course the baby's coming out the vagina, but you really got to push with your bottom. So for me, it feels like the baby's head is coming out my butt. So once I knew to push with those muscles again, then I knew I was pushing correctly. So I gave those first 2 pushes. They could see the baby's head. Everybody got excited. And then on that 3rd push, I got her head out. Her head was completely out. It was amazing. And then I remember my doctor saying to push again. And I was like, why? And then everybody laughed. I feel like I always say something funny during labor. And she was like, well, you still have a shoulder and the rest of the body to get out. And I knew that in my head. But at that moment, I was like, I'm delirious. I just want this baby out. So I was like, oh, okay, yeah, duh. I got to get the rest of the body out. So I pushed again, and that was the shoulders. And the last little bit of push that I gave was the rest of the body. And that all happened in 15 minutes. I remember looking at the clock, and it was 10 o'clock exactly when I started pushing. And her whole entire body, she was delivered at 10:15 on October 29th, 2023. Sweet Alma joined our family, and it was just amazing. It was such an amazing experience. Like, I'm so glad that I've pretty much got the birth that I wanted. Now, I did tear 2nd degree. I just can't get away from that 2nd degree tear. It has happened in all of my vaginal births so far, and it happened in my last birth. But honestly, like, when you compare that to a C-section, to me, it's like, I don't care. I can take that. I mean, of course, I wish I hadn't tore. So I remember the burning sensation when her head was coming out. And at that point, I was like, nope, I gotta get this baby out as quick as possible. So I think that's also one of the reasons why I tore. But yeah, that was minor. And I also had like a blood clot that the doctor had to get out. So after the baby was born, they took her over and checked her. I think a NICU nurse was there to check her out because they did confirm that my water had meconium in it. And like I said, my water was like yellowish greenish when it broke. So I kind of knew that as well. So they just wanted to make sure that she was okay. And she was. She had no problems with breathing or crying or anything. She was perfect. She was fine. And they gave her right back to me as soon as she was cleared. Of course, I had to have my tear repaired, and the doctor, she noticed that I was still bleeding afterwards, and of course the blood wasn't coming from the tear itself, it was coming from inside. So she was like, I think you have a blood clot. I had to go get it. I was a little bit scared at this point because up until this point, you know, I've had no pain medication, no epidural or anything like that. And she was like, it's going to be really quick, like 5 seconds, really quick. And I was scared, but of course I knew it had to come out because that can cause additional issues. So she just went up there and grabbed it out, and it was fine. She showed it to me, and it was a decent size, but she was like, that's it, the bleeding stopped. We're going to repair your tear and everything. So yes, that is how I gave birth to baby Alma. Like I said, I planned it to be at home. But at that point, you know, I just really trust my intuition. And I was like, I know I need to go to the hospital for this next part. And in hindsight, I am glad I went because I'm not so sure how I would have navigated, like, the bleeding and the tear and all that stuff at home. If that had happened here, we still would have had to go to the hospital anyway, I feel like. So yes, I'm glad I still got the labor of my dreams. I got to be home, I got to be free, and didn't have all this extra crazy Pitocin. They started the Pitocin once she was born. That's just something that they do for all moms to help against postpartum hemorrhage. So that was fine with me. I didn't have any issues with that, and I think that ran for like 2 hours post-birth. But other than that, no Pitocin, no epidural, and yes, it was amazing. It was like everything I dreamed and hoped and prayed for. Overall, I'm very happy with my birth. I am 3 months postpartum now, and I feel great. I feel almost 100%. The baby's doing well, I'm doing well, and I just really credit this birth and the pregnancy itself, because that went really well also to God, because I prayed every single day. I prayed at the end of my pregnancy a whole bunch, just asking God for everything that I wanted with the birth, and he pretty much gave me everything I asked for. So I'm so grateful. Thank you to you all who have watched this video. I know you have been waiting for it. Those people who I've told, you know, on my other social media that I was going to do this video. Yeah, I'm hoping that other moms out there find this video encouraging. Like I said, this is my 3rd VBAC. I knew the odds were stacked against me since I had 2 C-sections. I am going to do some other videos about how I induced my labor at home. So let me know if you're interested in watching that. Let me know if you have any questions. I think I covered everything in this video, but if I forgot anything, or if you have any questions about VBACs or childbirth or anything like that, leave it in the comment section below. I hope that you enjoyed watching this video, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye.